Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to BioPoint Stream the World of Bio for Neet 2021-2022 with yet another supremely amazing and an absolutely brand new session. Very happy to see you all back after a very long time. I hope you all can hear me properly, see the screen clearly visible to each one of you. Yes, I'm reducing the volume over here. So if there is any kind of issue happening with the audio, if anybody is there in the chat box, you are please supposed to tell me whether you can hear me, whether the voice is breaking in between or not. Yes, Nila, good evening. Yes, feeling a bit good in my health. So decided to take the class. So today, actually this particular sexual reproduction in flowering plants is actually a botany module from your class 12th syllabus. And today we are coming out with a part 3, that is a fertilization events which we are supposed to begin today. But since in the last session regarding pollination and all, I received a few messages in Telegram by saying that, sir, you were too fast for the session, that certain areas of the chapters or topic is not clear for us. So I hope you might have read the NCERT of this chapter up to where we have taught regarding the pollination, hydrophily, anemophily and everything. And today, I don't know how much portion we would complete in today's class because I'll be right now starting from the beginning of this chapter again by giving you a quick revision as a one-shot session, as a part 1 of a one-shot session on this chapter of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Yes, so I'll not be explaining each and everything in detail, but explanation would be there for each one of you to get to the point back, because we made I think a very long gap of 1.5 week. We have took a gap. So let's move on to the chapter without wasting any more time. Those who are watching the session and those who are going to watch the session recorded in the YouTube, don't forget to hit the like button. Do share it with your friends. Subscribe our channel of BioPoint Neet and leave the comment about if I give you any homework in the comment section. This is an amazing Telegram group at BioPoint New where we conduct regular discussion, polls, updates on our classes, OMR examination. I think we have already completed about 320 questions on all together, and hope you all guys are writing down the difficult question along with their answers on a book I have already mentioned about in our Telegram group. So starting with this chapter of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Yes, there is nothing so official about all those things, but I am just telling about each and every point in order to make you clear with the idea about, in order to give everybody a clear idea about this session. Once again, reminding or recalling all the important points. We know that in a flower, I'll tell you, in a flower, we know that the main sexual reproductive site is the flower. So flowers are the sites of sexual reproduction in all kinds of angiosperm. Why only angiosperms? Because angiosperms are referred to as what? The flowering plant. So flowers are the sites of sexual reproduction, and all flowering plants, that is what the single term is angiosperm, show different types of sexual reproduction. Several hormonal structural changes result in the differentiation and development of the floral primordium. Inflorescence bear the floral buds and then the flower. You know what is the term inflorescence stands for. What do you mean by inflorescence? A group of flowers. What is inflorescence? We have already studied about the racemose inflorescence, cymose inflorescence and all in the chapter of morphology of flowering plants. Inflorescence means it depends upon the flower. If the flower is very minute or if the flower is very, very small, a group of flowers aggregate together to have a group that is called as to be inflorescence. After this session, I'll try to send you. I think I have already sent an image or a diagram a few weeks back on the inflorescence diagram. So that is actually inflorescence. Actually, what is the advantage of these plants or flowers? If they convert the single flower into inflorescence, it means that it would give them an appearance such that all the insects, all the types of pollinating agent would give them a particular idea that this is a flower, and from that I'm going to get the nectar, in order to make them clearly visible for the pollinating agents. Especially, that is what is the main function of the flowers or single flowers or small minute flowers grouping together to have an inflorescence in nature. So a typical angiosperm, I'll show you. Please listen very carefully. I'm going to explain by myself without the slides with my handwritten notes. My handwritten notes is there in my hand. So I'm going to explain each and everything with the help of my handwritten notes. A few, I think in next 1 hour or something, I'll post the handwritten notes of cell cycle and cell division, my own handwritten notes of cell cycle and cell division in the group. You will receive my handwritten notes in the further sessions. Okay, so after this session, after this whole chapter is over, I'll try to provide the handwritten notes of this particular lecture also. So guys, we have already studied that flower is the site of sexual reproduction. We know that in a flower there is mainly two kinds of parts, that is androecium and you have about the structure which is known as the gynoecium. What do you mean by androecium? Androecium is actually the male reproductive part of a flower, and gynoecium is actually the female reproductive part of a flower. So androecium is supposed to be the male reproductive part of a flower, and gynoecium is the female reproductive part of a flower. Okay, so you might have already learned about the structure of androecium. The androecium is the male reproductive part of the flower. I don't know how much perfect my diagrams would get into because I'm writing with this. Okay, anyway, I'll try to make it understand and in a clear way so that each one of you understand what we are trying to convey. So this is a typical anther. Okay, this is the diagram of a typical anther. What do you mean by anther? Anther can be defined as the individual units of androecium. Anther is the individual units of androecium. So in the anther, you would say that, I think my writings are clear for you, or I'll take this particular thing. So the anther consists of a bilobed structure. The anther consists of a bilobed structure that is known as anther. Okay, anther, and the long slender stalk-like structure, you will call it as the filament. Okay. Guys, I have made a small mistake over here. Okay, this is a diagram. Actually, I told there also, I think I told about the typical anther. It's actually the diagram of a typical stamen. Okay, stamen is the individual unit. Stamen is the individual units of androecium. Please change it if you have written it wrong over there. I have made the correction. So that is actually there. So a typical stamen mainly consists of two main parts, a bilobed structure that is the anther and a long slender structure which is called the filament. Then next we are going to study about the concept of a typical female reproductive tract. Okay, typical female part of the flower. Okay, so the female part consists of a receiving site followed by a long tube-like structure. Okay, followed by a long tube-like structure which is having a bulged portion at the end. okay, which is having a bulged portion at the end. Inside this bulged portion, you have a particular structure which consists of a number of locules. Okay, so let's discuss what are these main parts. So this is a structure of a female part of the flower, that is a gynoecium. So it consists of an upper receiving part which is called, the upper receiving part you will call it as the stigma. The long tube-like portion is known as the style. Okay, the long tube-like portion you will call it as a style. The bulged portion at the end of the ovary, end of the pistil, you will call it as the ovary, and the structure inside the ovary you will call it them as the ovule. So stigma, style, ovary and ovule are the main parts of a typical female reproductive part of a flower. Is that clear for everybody? Is it clear? Can we move with the next one? Can we move with the next topic? Thank you so much. Let's move with the next topic. Okay. Yes. There is no more further explanation for all those things. You know all these things. Typical flower has two main parts. Anthraecium is there. Gynoecium is there. You know about it. Yes. So anthraecium is actually the male reproductive part of the flower. It consists of a wall of stamens. So a stamen mainly consists of two main parts, that is a filament and an anther are the two main parts of a okay. So first is the filament. A filament is a long and slender stalk like structure. So guys, if anybody is watching the lecture for the very first time, the first part or the detailed explanation of this particular session, the link will be provided in the description box. Okay, if anybody is watching this for the first time, I'm not giving any explanation here because I've already taken a very detailed class about it in the lecture number 1. So, the filament is a long and slender stalk-like structure and its proximal end is attached to the thalamus or the petal of the flower. All these things are very important diagrams for MCQ part because all the 3 diagrams given there on the screen is an NCERT based diagram. Clear? Okay, everybody. Next, anther is typically in the terminal portion which consists of a bilobed structure. Each lobe has 2 thecae which is referred to as the dithecous condition, and you would have a longitudinal groove that runs lengthways separating the 2 theca. Look, this is the longitudinal groove. Okay, I think you can see the black color I am depicting on the screen, right? So this is actually the longitudinal groove that's separating the theca of the flower. Okay. So guys, again, back to the screen. I'll explain the things once again for you. Okay. Everybody, is it clear? So guys, first let's discuss about how the male gametes are formed. That is, first is the microsporogenesis. Okay, microsporogenesis. Please listen very, very carefully. Then only you will be able to understand the topic very clearly because I'm explaining it in a very simple manner right now. So, microsporogenesis is the process of formation of microspore or pollen grains from the microspore mother cells within the anther. First of all, the anther arises as a small outgrowth. Okay, the anther arises as a small outgrowth and will develop. This particular outgrowth will develops into 2 theca. Okay, that particular outgrowth will convert it into a 2-lobed structure. This two-lobed structure would get separated to form a four-lobed structure like this. So guys, very carefully listen. In this particular structure, one cell becomes really functional. One cell of each particular theca become functional, and that particular functional cell you will call here as the archegonium. Not archegonium, archesporium. Okay, archesporium. Okay, archesporium. This particular structure, that is the archesporium. Now what is the condition of the anther? The microsporogenesis is the process of formation of the male pollen grains or the microspores from the microspore mother cells within the anther. The anther arises as a small outgrowth which will later convert into a two-lobed structure and finally converting themselves into a four-lobed structure. This particular four-lobed structure containing the archesporium cells is actually the typical anther, which is the dithecus in nature. One hypodermal cell. In the chapter anatomy, I'll be taking in detail about the hypodermis, everything. So one of the hypodermal cell from each lobe of the dithecus anther will enlarge to form an actively dividing cell called archesporium. The archesporium mainly has a function, that is, the archesporium divides towards outside. That is, this is the archesporium cells, right? So guys, I'll be enlarging it and drawing over here, but I'll erase it, okay? Because I have to draw the next part of the mind map. So in this particular thing, you will have the archesporial cells, right? So this particular archesporial cells will divide towards outside, that is, this as the outer region. This is the outer region, and this yellow colored region is the inner region. So what is this archesporial cells? What are they going to do? They divide towards outside to form the primary parietal cell. They divide towards outside to have the primary parietal cells. Primary parietal cells, and this particular archesporial cells divides towards inside to form the primary sporogenous cell. Okay, divide towards inside to have the primary sporogenous cells. Next, we are moving on to a very important diagram, a very important part of the chapter. That is, yes, a typical anther mainly consists of four main wall layers. Okay, four main wall layers are there, typical parts. So the outermost wall layer, you will call them as the epidermis. The outermost wall layer, you will call them as the epidermis. Then you will have the next layer as the endothecium. This particular layer, you will call it as the endothecium. Okay, then you have the middle layers and the tapetum. I think I'll explain it with the help of the diagram. Let me take out the diagram. Okay, this is a diagram over here. Okay. Yes. So a mature anther mainly consists of four main parts, that is the epidermis, the endothelium, middle layers and the tapetum. Right, this is a very important diagram. I'll try to zoom it for you guys. Yes, let's look in detail about it. So the outer layer you will call them as the epidermis. The next layer you will call them as the endothelium. Then you have the middle layers, tapetum and the microspore mother cell. So epidermis, endothelium, middle layers, tapetum and then only microspore mother cells. Yes, Harshita. Good evening. Okay, so this diagram is extremely important for us because it's a very frequently repeated question. I am just revising the topics which we have already discussed in the last class. Okay, so what is the main function of the outer three layers? The outer three layers, that is the epidermis, the endothelium, middle layers and the tapetum, helps in the dehiscence of anther to release the pollen grains, and tapetum helps in the nourishment of the developing pollen grains. Clear? Is it clear for everybody? Give me thumbs up on the chat box. I'm not going to highlight all the important things because we have already took a very detailed session, right? Is it clear for everybody? Yes, thank you so much. So microsporogenesis, we already studied that the anther develops and one of the archisporial cells gets converted into a microspore mother cell or the pollen mother cell. That particular pollen mother cell will undergo meiotic division to have the microspore tetrad. The formation of microspores from a pollen mother cell through meiosis is called microsporogenesis. Clear? Next is the pollen grain. So guys, please don't confuse. Male gametes is different. Pollen grains is different. Pollen grain is actually the male gametophyte. Okay. So it consists of mainly two main wall layers. Two main wall layers, that is the exane is there, intane is there. Exane is a very hard outer layer which is made up of sporopollenin that consists of a highly resistant organic material. It can withstand high temperature, strong acids and alkali. Guys, I'm giving you a guaranteed MCQ for your NEET 2021. A question from sporopollenin would definitely come for your exam. Okay, would definitely come for your NEET 2021 examination. Okay, name the substance which is made up of, which makes up the exane layer or the outer layer which is resistant to alkalis, acids, high temperature or even enzymes. So the answer is sporopollenin. The exane has apertures called germ pores where sporopollenin is absent, and guys, due to the presence of this particular thing, that is sporopollenin, we could say that the pollen grains can be preserved for a couple of times or a couple of weeks or months or years because of the presence of this sporopollenin. They can be preserved as fossils. So the intine is the inner layer, which is a thin and a continuous layer that is made up of cellulose and pectin. So intine is the inner layer which is made up of cellulose and pectin. Clear? Very important, very important. The diagram of the pollen grain, if it's clear for you, definitely there is no need for studying any kinds of theory because it's very easy for you to understand right from the diagram. The bigger cell over there in the pollen grain structure is known as a vegetative cell that consists of an abundant reserve food material. And this particular large vegetative cell has a very irregular nucleus, a very large and irregular nucleus. Next, we are coming across the generative cell. It is a very small cell and floats in the cytoplasm of the vegetative cell. It is a spindle-shaped cells with a dense cytoplasm and a small nucleus. Actually, when we see this from outside, we could say that the generative cell is actually floating inside the vegetative cell because that much bigger is the vegetative cell. Okay. You have to have a clear idea about the cryopreservation, that is the storage of pollen grains in liquid nitrogen at a temperature of minus 196 degrees Celsius, and they can be stored in pollen banks for crop breeding programs. Clear? So this is a very important diagram. I'm giving you again a guaranteed MCQ for your NEET examination, NEET 2021 special NEET bumper question. Special NEET bomber question. Okay, special NEET bomber question diagram. Very important. So gynoecium is a female reproductive part of the flower. Since if a gynoecium consists of only one pistil, it is called monocarpellary. If it is consisting of many pistil, you will call it as the multicarpellary. In multicarpellary pistil, you would have two conditions. That is, if the pistils are fused together, you will call them as a syncarpous condition, or if them as free, you will call them as the apocarpous condition. Okay, we have already explained right in the beginning. I have explained the structure of gynoecium and everything. Structure of ovule, the diagram very important. I am not explaining the things in detail again because I have taken a separate class in explaining the structure of megasporangium or the ovule. Lecture number 2. Okay, the link of the playlist will be added over there in the description box soon after the lecture. Or go to the community page, just search out sexual reproduction in flowering plants. You would see the 3 videos over there with the same thumbnails, and every detail is provided there. Okay, so those who haven't watched out that lecture, please do watch it in very detail. I have explained each and everything over there. So the ovary mainly consists of an ovule. The ovule is attached to the placenta by the help of a stalk called funicle. The junction between the body of the ovule and the funicle, you will call it as the hilum. The ovule has to be protected, right? So the ovule has been surrounded by a 2 to 3 layered structures called integuments, which leaves a small opening called the micropyle. And opposite to the micropylar end, you will have the chalacal end, which is a basal part. Okay. Opposite to the micropylar end, you will have the chalacal end. Just exactly as, guys, tell me the nutritive layer which is present in case of male reproductive system of a flower. We have studied that this particular layer supplies the nourishment. This particular layer supplies the necessary amount of nutrients to the developing pollen grains. Which was the name of the layer? On the chat box. All my eyes on the chat box. Absolutely, Nila. Very good. It is the tapetum. Very good. So tapetum is the layer in case of male reproductive system of a flower, in which provides the nutrients, the necessary nutrients required for a flower. But when it comes into the case of ovule or the gynoecium, you would have that this is enclosed with an integument and consists of a nutritive layer which is called the nucellus. Harshita, is it clear now? Nucellus that contains the reserve food materials. So inside the nucellus, you will have the embryo sac, which is a female gametophyte. Tell me the name of the male gametophyte on the chat box. The name of the male gametophyte on the chat box. Have told you that embryo sac is a female gametophyte. So the question right now arising over here is the male gametophyte. Name the male gametophyte in case of a plant or a flower. Yes, I've already explained you there itself in today's class itself 2 minutes ago. Absolutely, Harshita, very good. It is the pollen grains. So pollen grains is actually the male gametophyte. Clear? We have studied about this in detail in the class. I have already told you. Yes, Nila, pollen grains is the answer. This is a very important, guys. Very important. The nucleus consists of, now this one is not important. Yes, this slide is very important. So A typical mature embryo sac consists of 8 nucleated 7-celled condition. Very important question. Very important question. Guys, I hope you all have I failed to inform you guys about the JE notification. I hope there is nobody in our group which who's focusing towards the JE main examination. I don't know whether you are focusing it or not. Okay. So if anybody is there watching the lecture who tries to write both the exams simultaneously and wishes to go for which you get an admission, the JE official notification from NTA has already been received. So please make sure that you take out the particular thing, that is registration of the JE means phase 1 February 23rd is going to be the exam. So guys, we are expecting a very good postponement or regarding a NEET also, I don't know. And guys, for the freshers, not for the freshers, I'm telling this for the repeater batch of NEET 2021 or the dropper batch of my droppers who's going to be the toppers next year. This is a golden opportunity for you guys this time. That is, till now, NTA is not planning to reduce any syllabus of NEET 2021. Okay? For JEE mains, they have found out another alternative by saying that they could increase the number of questions. So guys, an important information I'll tell you after that we move on to the class. So guys, till 2020, now I'm talking about the JEE mains only. Okay, JEE mains. So for up to JEE 2020, in all together, you have a total of 25 into 3. That is 25 questions from physics, 25 questions from chemistry, 25 questions from maths. Since there is no clarity by NTA also regarding the syllabus, what this time NTA planning to do is for JEE main examination is that they will increase the number of questions from 25 into 30. Okay. So since last time, that is 2020, there was only 75 questions altogether, but this time onwards there will be 90 questions, out of which a particular student have to answer only 75 questions. Right? He can drop 15 questions, in which suppose that 15 question he have to drop because that is not to be taught in his or her academic year. Clear? So that is the opportunity provided by NTA for the JEE aspirants. So this is a golden opportunity for my toppers. You have to, I'm taking each and every chapter in detail, even though some are in 12th, you would see that certain chapters are omitted. A half part and all those chapters, the first chapter and all is omitted from your syllabus. I'm taking each and every point in detail till an official notification, if any, coming from NTA or not. So study each and every chapter, take it very seriously. There are certain students who have not got any kind of coaching this particular year, and compared to the freshers, this time topper batch of NEET 2021 can hit a golden target by scoring a very good marks, because they have missed out a lot of portion in their academic year preparing for your boards, but you guys are concentrating only on your NEET 2021. So it's a huge time where you can concentrate keen on your topics, your subjects of the entire subjects. Okay. So this particular slide is very important. Back to the class. So a typical mature embryo sac is 8 nucleated and 7 celled. The 3 cells in the micropilar region forms the egg apparatus. It consists of a synergid and a egg cell. The synergids have special thickenings at the micropilar tip, which is called the filiform apparatus, which helps to guide the pollen tube into the synergids. If any official notification regarding NEET 2021 comes to, I'll definitely let you know through our YouTube channel or our Telegram group. Definitely, I'll let you know about it. Each and every detail of it, I'll explain to you. Okay. So, pollination is what we discussed in the last class. You know what is pollination? Pollination is a transfer of pollen grain from the anther to the stigma of a pistil. So pollination can be mainly of 3 types: autogamy, geitonogamy, and xenogamy. That is, three types pollination can occur. That is, pollen grains from this particular flower can fall on the same flower itself again. Or pollinating agent, that is, the pollen grains from this flower can fall onto the stigma of another flower of the same plant. Or the pollen grain from one flower can fall onto the pollen grain of one flower can fall onto the stigma of another flower at a different location. Clear? So three main types of pollination are there: autogamy, equal to self-pollination, geitonogamy, and xenogamy. So what do you mean by autogamy? Up to pollination last we have discussed. So quick recap about it. So autogamy, similar to self-pollination, transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of the same flower. So there are mainly two types of flowers: chasmogamous flower or cleistogamous flowers. What do you mean by chasmogamous flowers? Chasmogamous flower means like a normal flowers, the flowers are open. But the cleistogamous flower means they produce two different kinds of flowers. That is, they have produced flower which are always closed. Look at this particular diagram. This is the chasmogamous flower. That is, they are open like the normal flower. Look, chasmogamous. Look at the cleistogamous flower. They are bud. They are not coming out of the bud. Clear? So this is to ensure, this particular cleistogamous condition ensures that there is no presence of any kinds of pollinating agents over there, because they are closed, right? So all the pollen grains, when it dehisces, what happens is that the pollen grain will directly fall onto the stigma or the female reproductive tract. So chasmogamous flowers are similar to the flowers of other species with exposed anther and stigma. Cleistogamous flower, the speciality, very important. Please take it down. I'll provide the PDF of the session. Listen in the class, everybody. Cleistogamous flowers means they do not open at all. Anthers and stigma lie very close to each other. They are autogamous in nature. And the continuous self-pollination can lead to inbreeding depression. Okay, continuous. If the self-pollination continues for a long time, what happens is that it may lead to inbreeding depression. The same thing happens in case of animals also. If self-breeding happens for a multiple times, it leads to inbreeding depression, and I have taken the class in very detail in the chapter strategies for the enhancement of food production. Yes, Harshita, autogamy is only seen in cleistogamous flower. Why? Because those flowers will never open at all. Okay, they will never open at all. They are always closed. That is a very important statement over here. They are always autogamous. The speciality, the anther and stigma lie very close to each other. When the anther dies in the flower buds, the pollen grains come in contact with the stigma directly, because that much adjacent they are placed. And the very important statement, cleistogamous flower produce assured seed sets even in the absence of pollinating agents. Okay. Geitonogamy, what do you mean by geitonogamy or geitonogamy? You can pronounce it. Geitonogamy is a transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. In one particular plant, there may not be one particular flower, right? So many flower will be there. Transfer of pollen grains from one flower to the adjacent flower. That can also be geitonogamy, but functionally it is cross pollination. But genetically it is similar to autogamy. Why? Because the same plant produces the same kinds of flower, right? A rose will not produce one in one branch. It will not produce a type of a rose plant, a rose flower, and in another branch it won't produce a hibiscus or a shoe flower, right? So if it is a hibiscus plant, all the flower will be similar. The pollen grain will have a definite structure, a definite feature of that particular plant itself. So it is genetically similar to autogamy, but functionally, what is it? It is a cross pollination, because there is a need of a pollinating agent is required over there. The last type is a xenogamy, that is a transfer of pollen grains from stigma or from not stigma, sorry, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of a different plant. And this is a type of pollination that brings about a genetic variation in the offspring. So brings about genetically different pollen grains to the stigma. Very important statement. Name the type of pollination that brings about genetic variation in flowers or the pollen grains. What is it? It is xenogamy. These are the different agents of pollination. That is, wind pollination is there, water pollination is there, biotic agents are there, abiotic agents are there. Abiotic agents, non-living things, that is wind and water. Biotic agents, insects, birds, bats, primates, arboreal, rodents, reptile, etc. Okay. First is a wind. You know what is a wind? Have you all seen this particular two plants? Have you all seen this particular thing? The two plants on the screen. Anemophily, you would have the corncob as well as the other plant shown over there, in which the type of grass it is. The wind pollination is very common. So the pollination by wind is called anemophily. More common by abiotic agent is a wind. Very important question for MCQ for your entrance exam. What is corncob? Corncob constitutes which all parts? Corncob constitute which all parts? Corncob consists of the tassels. Okay, the corncob has tassels which are actually the stigma and style. The combination of stigma and style, you will together call it as the tassels, which actually constitutes the reproductive structure of a corncob. Is it clear? Yes. Let's move with the next one. Ways for effective pollination. Guys, is there any need for me to explain it anymore about the ways for effective pollination? I'll show you how many slides are left behind. We have reached only 45 to complete this chapter. We have how much? 88. Okay, we have to complete all these fresh topics. Now we are on the 45th one. Okay, so it's very easy. Yes, Harshita, what you are telling is exactly the answer for these questions. Ways for effective pollination. Wind, I'll tell it very fastly, okay, as a quick revision. So the flowers produce large amount of pollen. The pollen grains are light and non-sticky. They often possess a well-exposed stamens and large feathery stigma to trap the pollen grains. Guys, if the pollen grains is very, very heavy, what happens? It won't be easy for the wind to transfer the pollen grains. So for wind pollinating flowers, the pollen grains is very light and should not be sticky in nature. Because if they are sticky, if wind just blowing, it will stick to a person's body or to a plant or a flower stem or leaf or whatever, and it will lose the chance of its pollination. So next one is the water hydrophily. It's a quite rare in nature. It is limited to 30 genera, mostly monocot plants shows that. Example, Vallisneria and Hydrilla, which are the freshwater guys. Please note it down. Vallisneria and Hydrilla are freshwater hydrophytes. Zostera is a marine sea grass. Okay, marine organism is a Zostera, and Vallisneria and Hydrilla freshwater aquatic plants. So, very important one, in Vallisneria, the female flower reaches the surface of the water by the long stalk, and the male flower of the pollen grains are released on the water surface. Right? Look, guys, the male flowers, since they are very light, what happens? Okay, since they are very light, they flow onto the surface and through the water current, and the female flower will through the long ribbon like flower. What happens? The pollen grains would fall onto this particular female flower. That is actually the type of pollination in Vallisneria. Absolutely, guys, very good. You're going in the chat box, very good. In sea grasses, what happens is that the female flower will remain submerged in water. Okay, the pollen grains are very long and ribbon-like, and they are carried inside the water. A bit, the density of the pollen grains of sea grasses or Zostera is a bit more than that of the Vallisneria. So what happens is that since they have a more density, it will a bit down, it comes below the water, and since they are long and ribbon shaped, they will directly be received by the stigma. Clear? So that is all about the pollen grains are prevented from wetting by the mucilaginous covering. Okay, and guys, please don't confuse this particular two plants over here. This is repeatedly interested part of the Neet question preparers: water hyacinth and water lily. Water hyacinth, the type of pollination in water hyacinth or water lily, it is not hydrophily. It can either be endomophily or it can be anemophily. Mostly anemophily is the type of pollination taking place. Okay, mostly anemophilous type of pollination takes place over there. Clear? Very important. Please take it down. Water hyacinth, water lily. Next, endomophily is the pollination by insects, which is very common. Features of insect pollinated flower: in order to attract these insects, the flowers is large, colorful, and it consists of nectar or pollen grains as rewards for the plants. The small flowers would make inflorescence to make them visible. The pollen grains are generally sticky in nature. When the animal comes in contact with the anther and the stigma, its body gets the pollen grains, and when it comes in contact with the stigma, it results in pollination. Clear? Next, Amorphophallus. Guys, have anybody seen this flower of Amorphophallus? I hope no. This is the tallest flower, consisting of 6 feet in length. Okay, Amorphophallus is the tallest flower, which is of 6 feet. Next, in this Amorphophallus, and next, a particular important thing, a moth species and yucca cannot complete their life cycle without each other. So the relationship between the moth and the yucca plant we will study in detail in the chapter Organism and Population, first chapter of ecology, which we would be starting very soon. So at that particular time, I'll explain in detail. There we have about it. Clear? I think from here onwards is the thing that we are to discuss. Yes. So let's discuss about the new topics of today's class. Outbreeding devices. We already told that continuous inbreeding may cause, continuous self-pollination can cause inbreeding depression. So there are certain techniques for outbreeding devices. First, hermaphrodite flower can undergo self-pollination. Continuous self-pollination results in inbreeding depression. To avoid self-pollination and to encourage cross-pollination, there are some devices in the plants. It is not a type of inserted device or something. It is actually something which is shown by the plants itself. So the first one is avoiding synchronization. What do you mean by synchronization? Synchrony between the release of male and female gametes, or synchrony between the maturation of the reproductive parts. So avoiding, certain plants avoid synchronization between the parts. That is, the pollen is released. Sometimes the pollen is released much before the stigma, or sometimes the stigma becomes receptive much before the pollen is released in the flowers. So that is number one outbreeding device by which you can avoid a self-pollination. Second thing is the arrangement of anther and stigma at different positions. Arrangement of anther and stigma at different positions can also be brought about by the plants to avoid the continuous self-pollination. Is it clear? Self-incompatibility, it is a genetic mechanism to prevent self-pollen from the same flower or other flowers of the same plant from fertilization by inhibiting the pollen germination or the pollen tube growth in the pistil. Okay, so guys, self-incompatibility means a particular plant, when the pollen grains falls on the stigma, when the pollen grains from a flower falls on the stigma, what happens is that it would getting prevented. Okay, the pollen grains, first we will discuss about it in the next tomorrow's class. We would discuss about the pollen pistil interaction and all. Okay, So there we would study about it in detail. What happens is that, guys, I'll tell you, the pollen grains, when it falls on the stigma of the flower, there is a chemical interaction between the pollen grains and the stigma. So at that particular time, it is the time for the stigma whether to tell to the pollen grains to accept, that they will accept it or reject it. So certain plants, even though they understand that this is the pollen grain required to fuse with the egg or ovum inside them, they will allow incompatibility. Okay, they will prevent the self pollen from fertilizing or germinating inside this particular thing. Is it clear? Yes. Last one is a production of unisexual flowers. So guys, in certain plants, after a few times, what happens is that they will start producing unisexual flowers. Either they will become monoecious or they will become dioecious in nature. That is, sometimes they will produce only male and female flowers may be present on the same plant. That is monoecious, that is castor and maize, but it prevents autogamy but not geitonogamy. In dioecious plant, for example, papaya, male and female flowers are present on different plants. It prevents both autogamy and geitonogamy. So name the condition, that is a dioecious condition, prevents both autogamy and geitonogamy. So guys, I'm ending today's session, today's amazing session. So let's have in detail about each one of these particular slides in the upcoming classes. Right from pollen pistil interaction onwards, we would take part in the next class I would be taking over here. Okay, so these all about the post fertilization event is the next topic which we are going to discuss in the upcoming class. We have to study about the structure of fruits, flowers, etc., seeds, ovule, etc. we have to study. So thank you guys. See you in the next class with a wonderfully amazing session, part number 4 of the one shot session of this chapter. Bye bye. And at the time when the official notification of Neet comes to you through our channel BioPoint, Stream the World of Bio, as soon as we receive it. Clear? So thank you for your cooperation, listening in the class very carefully. Thank you so much. Read the NCERT right now. Take 10 minutes right now. Read out the NCERT up to here. Then only close it and go for any kind of refreshments. Clear? Okay. Done, everybody. So bye-bye. Take care in the next class. Great. Bye-bye.